But the fact remains, President Trump is not only securing our border, but he is deporting criminal illegal aliens. If Democrats want to stand in the way of that and they want to tell their constituents, hey, vote for us in the midterms, vote for us in 2028, we'll make sure that the criminal aliens come back. Far be it from me to stand in your way. Continue that message. Best of luck with.
In this heated debate, woke progressive Brian Tyler Cohen matches up against Trump supporter Tomi Lahren. And Brian Tyler Cohen is a fast-talking pundit for the Democrat. He basically repeats mainstream media talking points, and I'm beginning to wonder if he has an original thought in his head. And of course, Tomi Lahren, she is a Trump supporter. She's going to have to set the record straight because inevitably Brian Tyler Cohen is going to sprinkle in lies to his facts, and those lies will need to be checked. And so let's have a look at Tomi Lahren going head-to-head with woke progressive Brian Tyler Cohen.
We're talking with Tomi Lahren on the right, Brian Tyler Cohen on the left. Let's talk about immigration now. We have seen a massive drop-off in illegal border crossings after President Trump has really cracked down in immigration. Biggest changes probably of anything he's done from the Biden administration. There are also a series of lawsuits, though, claiming that the administration is rushing to deport people who legally have a right to be here. The administration admitting, at least in one instance, they did make a mistake. Tomi, this is your issue. What do you make of President Trump's approach to immigration? And what do you say to critics who feel like he's rushing it and some people are getting caught up in the middle who shouldn't?
Well, listen, if you are an illegal alien, you have no legal right to be in this country, so you're not getting caught up in anything. I would just say that. I can't wait to talk about the so-called administrative error, and I can't wait to listen to Brian Tyler Cohen defend criminal illegal aliens. That's a wonderful hill for Democrats to die on. I encourage you to continue doing that. But I'll tell you this. President Biden said it couldn't be done. He said you cannot secure the border without the bipartisan border bill. Well, I guess that was a lie, just like everything else they fed to us during those 4 years where we essentially had a vegetable in office. It can be done. President Trump has managed to do it in less than 3 months. When you had border crossings, thousands a day, and now you're down to about a handful of gotaways, if that, I think this is an incredible success. Not only are we deporting criminal illegal aliens, we're keeping people from coming into this country illegally so we don't have to deal with the problem of deporting criminal illegal aliens 5-10 years down the road. This is an incredible success. President Trump has been able to do it in rapid speed, and there's nobody getting caught up that has a legal right to be here. You come into this country illegally, you are up for deportation. That might make Democrats mad, but I think that most of us on the right and the country that voted for this are quite happy with what's going on.
Brian, what's wrong with that?
It's interesting that you say nobody's getting caught up because Abrego Garcia was caught up by getting sent to a foreign gulag in El Salvador when the Trump administration itself conceded that it was an administrative error. And so the Supreme Court, this 6-3 conservative Supreme Court, and a court that is so extreme, we've never seen a court this far right in our lifetimes, ruled 9-0 unanimously that he had to be sent back. So to claim that no one is getting caught up in this system when that is exactly what's happening and it's being litigated at the highest levels of the judiciary is pretty bad faith here.
Tomi?
Oh, I can't wait to respond to that. So this person that was caught up, the so-called Maryland father that y'all like to talk about, it's not that he was caught up because he was a legal citizen or because he wasn't gang affiliated. It was an administrative error talking about the flight itself. OK, so it's not as if, and it actually really bothers me when those on the left say that there are just average Americans being swept up because they have a funny looking tattoo. That's not the reality. In fact, that is a lie. And it's really unfortunate that that's the narrative the left has to go with here. I understand that there is due process, but I think you understand, Brian Tyler Cohen, that there is a different set of rules for due process for people who have no legal right to be in this country. And especially when your own county has said that you are gang affiliated. That wasn't President Trump that said it. That was the Prince George County that said that this was a gang affiliated person. So if you're going to talk about people getting swept up, at least have your facts correct. This irritates me to no end.
Brian, but to the bigger point of all of this, despite some of these cases, is there value in what the president is doing? I mean, we have seen these border crossings go way, way down.
I'll certainly concede that Joe Biden could have done more and should have done more to take control of what was happening at the border. And in fact, his unwillingness to do that is largely what created the political environment for Trump to be able to exploit a lot of the pain that Americans were feeling as it relates to immigration. But that's still no excuse for Donald Trump to engage in this lawless deportation effort for people who haven't had due process to the point where the courts had to step in. I know that you're trying to make some weird distinction between due process rights for people who are Americans or legal residents, as was the case with Abrego Garcia. But the Constitution says that if you are here, you are entitled to due process. And that is not what these people are getting. That is why the courts had to order them sent back. That's why the courts had to order the planes get turned around. And of course, the Trump administration opted to defy it, not before we have folks like J.D. Vance who came on Twitter trying to beat his chest about how great it was that these people were deported. And how no court would push back on this when the Supreme Court and all the federal judiciary is doing exactly that. But the reality is that these people are entitled to due process. And if you believe in what you're saying, which presumably the Trump administration does, they should have no problem proving this stuff in court.
Tomi?
Well, I would just say if Democrats, I started out with it, Alex, and I'm going to continue on it. If Democrats really want to die on the hill of bringing back plane loads of criminal, illegal alien gang members.
But you haven't proven that they're criminals.
Please.
That's the problem. Like, look, I will be the first one to say if there is a gang member in this country, someone who has committed any crime, big or small, get him out. Sure. I'll absolutely concede that. We don't need criminals in this country. But if you're talking about somebody who you don't know because you haven't afforded them due process, then you can't just make that claim.
Well, again, I will say it was actually Prince George County that labeled this person a gang member, and he is in fact an illegal alien. But we can go anecdotes aside. We can argue over the Maryland father all day long. I'd be happy to do it. I've done a deep dive into this particular case. But the fact remains, President Trump is not only securing our border, but he is deporting criminal, illegal alien. If Democrats want to stand in the way of that and they want to tell their constituents, hey, vote for us in the midterms, vote for us in 2028, we'll make sure that the criminal aliens come back. Far be it for me to stand in your way. Continue that message. Best of luck with it.
And if Republicans want to run on, hey, we can disappear you with no due process, far be it for me to stand in your way. If Republicans want to turn the United States into Russia, where we disappear political opponents with zero due process, sending them to foreign gulags somewhere, if that's really what you're running on behind the banner of the Party of Law and Order, be my guest.
Okay, so I let Brian Tyler Cohen get the last word there because the left has been running with this whole Trump administration is disappearing people. No, these people are not being disappeared. That does not fit the definition of being disappeared when you are simply arrested. Your family, the person's family, basically everybody that's interested in the story that looks into it knows exactly where the person is. Being taken away from their home and put into the court system and possibly being deported is not being disappeared. Okay, so that aside, Brian Tyler Cohen likes to mention you don't know if he was here illegally or not. Well, there's one way that I've come up with that is really, really simple, and it's that if these people used the CBP-1 app that was used by the Biden administration to basically usher in so many of these people, which is what they're using to kind of have the rough count of how many people actually came into the country under Joe Biden, which in my opinion, I think the real number is up to potentially maybe even 40 million people that came into the country under Biden administration. All we do is, if you use the CBP-1 app to come into the country, you're top on the list to go back. We already have a record, we already have a log, and we already have their country of origin proving that they are not in the country legally, essentially. Right now, they're waiting for their asylum claims or whatever, and all that should be ruled null and void. And here's what AG Pam Bondi had to say today in a meeting in the Oval Office with Donald Trump and, ironically, the president of El Salvador.
Turn the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane. So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. And 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
Which then the media followed up with the president of El Salvador asking, would he return this potential terrorist to the United States? And this was his answer.
Well, I can't. Most that suggested that I smuggle a terrorist in the state.
It's always
How can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States. Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah,
they're sick. These are sick people.
And that's where I'll ask you, do you believe this guy should be returned back to the United States? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.